first, just faint murmurs that seep through the walls of my room in the dead of night, blending with the creaks and sighs of the old house. I brushed it off as my mind playing tricks on me. Who wouldn't? Sleep deprivation does strange things, and I've been pushing myself too hard lately. But when the whispers turned to voices low, guttural sounds that twisted my name and slithered into my ears, I knew something was terribly wrong. It was in the middle of a suffocating summer night that I first saw it. I was lying flat on my back, drenched in sweat, heart pounding like a sledgehammer against my ribs. My eyes refused to close, drawn to the corner of the room where shadows seemed to thicken, swirling together like ink and water. I tried to move, to look away, but my body was as heavy as stone, my limbs paralyzed. Familiar sensation, one I dreaded since childhood, gripped me, sleep paralysis. I fought the terror rising in my throat, tried to remind myself it was all in my head. But then the shadows moved. A shape began to emerge, pulling itself out from the darkness with agonizing slowness, limbs contorting, stretching in unnatural angles. Its face, or what should have been a face, was a void, an emptiness that seemed to pulse and writhe. And yet, I felt its gaze, cold and invasive, like icy fingers prodding into the deepest recesses of my mind. "You can't move, can you?" The voice slithered into my head, an oily whisper that resonated from the inside out. "I've waited for you for so long." A chill, cold as death, spread through my veins. Wanted to scream, to thrash against the invisible bonds holding me down, but I was trapped. My own body a prison. The figure crept closer, the weight of its presence pressing down on my chest until each breath was a struggle, shallow and desperate. And then I felt its touch, clammy skeletal fingers grazing the skin of my arm, sending a bolt of pure terror down my spine. "Don't leave me," it rasped, the words scratching against my mind like nails on glass. And then it leaned down, its face or lack thereof mere inches from mine. Void in its face seemed to twist, pulling me in, swallowing my thoughts, my will, everything I was. Woke up gasping, drenched in cold sweat, my pulse racing. My room was empty, bathed in the dim glow of dawn. For a moment, I dared to hope it was over, just a nightmare brought on by stress. But deep down, I knew the truth. It was only the beginning. The days following that encounter were a haze of exhaustion and dread. Sleep was a betrayal, and every time I closed my eyes, I could feel it, that hollow, empty face, pulling me down into darkness. I tried everything, drinking until my head spun, taking enough sleeping pills to knock out a horse, leaving every light in my apartment blazing, even rigging up a camera to prove to myself it was all in my head. Nothing worked. Every night, it found me waiting patiently in the corner, watching. A week later, the first marks appeared. 3 thin scratches on my arm, so deep they stung every time I moved. I hadn't noticed them until I stumbled into the bathroom that morning, dazed from another fitful night. The scratches felt alive, like they were burning into my skin, little rivers of fire that itched and throbbed. When I asked around, friends, family, even my doctor just nodded sympathetically. "Probably scratching yourself in your sleep," they said. "Or maybe it's a stress reaction." But I knew the truth. Those scratches, they weren't mine. Memory of its touch, icy and invasive, lingered like a brand. I knew in my gut it had left its mark. Night after night, the thing returned, its visits growing longer and more twisted. Each time it moved a little closer, its twisted limbs reaching toward me as I lay helpless, pinned to my bed. Its words, whispered in that jagged, broken voice, began to burrow into my mind, threading through my thoughts like poison. One evening, after a sleepless week, I felt myself slip into a restless, half-awake state. My room was silent, bathed in shadows, and I could feel the heaviness of sleep pressing down on me. I fought it, tried to pull myself back, but I was too far gone. I was trapped in that familiar paralysis, and the room felt suffocatingly small. Then, slowly, it emerged from the shadows. Its form had changed, becoming more defined, more human almost, Limbs stretched longer than they should, and the hollowness in its face had deepened, swirling with an unnatural darkness. As it moved closer, I could see glimpses of things in the void, faces twisted in silent screams, pale, grasping hands reaching out only to be swallowed again by the blackness. It leaned over me, the void in its face now mere inches away. This time I could feel it a pull, like it was drawing something from me, siphoning my thoughts, my essence, my very being. I tried to scream, to thrash, to break free, but my body was a dead weight. Its whispers burrowed deeper, gnawing at my sanity. Let go, it hissed, the words like barbed wire scraping against my mind. Surrender to me. In the morning, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. My face was pale, gone, hollowed by exhaustion and fear. The scratches on my arms had multiplied, angry red welts crisscrossing my skin in jagged patterns. My hand shook as I splashed cold water on my face, trying to shake off the lingering sense of dread that clung to me. I started to lose track of time. Days bled into nights, and I moved through the hours in a daze, haunted by the memory of its touch, its whispers, its hollow, consuming gaze. Friends began to notice, their concern a dull echo that I couldn't bring myself to care about. They wouldn't understand. They hadn't seen it, felt it, been pulled into that endless, suffocating darkness. Desperation drove me to research, seeking answers in old books, online forums, anywhere that might hold a clue. I stumbled upon stories of sleep paralysis demons, ancient entities that fed on fear, on the life force of those they tormented. But nothing I found explained why it had chosen me, why it returned night after night, growing stronger, more real. One night, as I lay trapped once again, it spoke a name, my name. Hearing it from those twisted lips, that hollow void sent a chill through my soul. It knew me, understood me in ways no human ever could, and it was hungry. Your life is nothing, it whispered, its voice dripping with malice. Your fear, it sustains me, feeds me. You cannot escape. I felt myself slipping, drawn into the darkness in its face, my mind unraveling as it devoured me piece by piece. Memories flashed before my eyes, faces, places, fragments of who I was, swallowed by the void. I was losing myself, my identity dissolving into the emptiness. And then, as suddenly as it began, it released me. I awoke, gasping, drenched in sweat, the taste of terror still sharp on my tongue. But something had changed. I was no longer alone in my own mind. I could feel it there, lurking in the shadows of my thoughts, whispering, twisting my dreams into nightmares. The visits became more frequent, the entity growing bolder, its presence lingering even in the daylight hours. I would catch glimpses of it in mirrors, reflections in windows, always watching, waiting. My friends began to pull away, their concern giving way to fear as I became a hollow shell of who I once was. I barely recognized myself anymore. One night, I decided to confront it, to face the horror that had invaded my life. I lay in bed, forcing myself to stay calm as the familiar paralysis set in, the room filling with a suffocating darkness. It emerged from the shadows, its form more solid, more real than ever before. I am not afraid of you, I whispered, the words trembling on my lips. A low, guttural laugh echoed through the room, and the void in its face twisted into something that might have been a smile. Fear is only the beginning, it hissed, its voice like shattered glass scraping against my mind. You will be mine. In the days that followed, I became a prisoner in my own home, haunted by the entity that had taken root in my mind. I tried to stay awake, to fight it, but my body was weak, worn down by exhaustion and fear. Each night, it grew stronger, its whispers more insistent, its touch more invasive. I knew I couldn't escape it. It had claimed me, body and soul, and there was no going back. I was lost, consumed by the darkness that had invaded my life. I can always feel it watching me, its presence a constant, suffocating weight. I know how much longer I can hold on, how much more of myself I can lose before I become nothing but a hollow shell, a vessel for the entity that haunts me.